She's grown HR functions from chaos to clarity, but leads from the inside out. Evelin Babos is the kind of people-first leader who brings both heart and precision to the table. With over a decade of experience scaling culture and navigating high growth, she's the calm in the storm and the spark behind empowered teams. Today on the Cultivate Experience, we explore what it means to lead with empathy without losing edge, building inclusive workplaces that actually work, and staying grounded in the human side of transformation. Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome back to a fresh episode of the Cultivate Experience. Today, I have the joy of welcoming a leader focused on empathy and collaboration in the world of people empowerment. Evelin Babos, Director of Human Resources. Evelin, we are thrilled to have you join us for the Cultivate Experience.
Hi, Wendy. I am so happy to be here. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you. How are you?
Oh, doing well. I mean, you know what? Full weeks, always a special place in my heart when I can sit and spend time and interact and engage with leaders like yourself and know that I don't just get to keep this gift to myself. We get to share it. I've had the pleasure of being able to learn a little bit more about you. And boy, it's exciting to hear the things that you've been able to do. And that question that I always love to ask, that why. Our time is going to fly by today, so I don't want to lose anything for our audience. Let's dive in. Evelin, every leader has a why. We talk about it. What personal conviction or your lived experience that you would say really shapes the way that you lead today?
Yeah, I really love that question because it's one that has taken me 12 plus years to answer. So I'm happy that we're sitting together at a point in time when I can confidently answer that. I do believe that one of my purposes is to help people through my work. I have had many different career paths, and I do believe that anywhere from my pro bono career coaching, resume writing, placing people in their dream roles, mentoring people in their roles now or their soon to be roles, and just continuing to improve myself. So in turn, I can improve and motivate others. Another thing I personally love about, where I am now in my career, I love being behind the scenes, coaching people up, watching them shine. I love to watch people that I've mentored just grow in their career, figure out their why, figure out their career paths. And it's, definitely not been easy, but I truly can appreciate where I am now. And I think if you were to interview or ask any of my current direct reports, they would probably admit that I'm not necessarily the easiest to work for just because of the high standards that I set. But I encourage them and I pull them up with me rather than, kind of speak down to them. And I do think that has been encouraging for them and myself as well.
I don't think that there'd be any doubt that the audience would know why you and I have connected, right? These are the things that they hear and why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, because you literally just defined relational leadership. High challenge. You're a high challenge leader. Sometimes that is viewed as, man, she's tough. But everything about what you said was high support, the coming alongside. I was recently reminded by a colleague that great leadership is not the leader who is going to push or pull someone along, but those who are going to guide, that literally walking alongside. And that is what you described so beautifully. And now the audience knows what I know and how much fun we're going to have in this conversation, just hearing your journey. You did a great job of saying, hey, it took 12 plus years to figure this out, and I'm still working on it, right? This is not something where we just arrive. That being said, some of the things you've shared with me, and now we're going to walk through, this hasn't been, that's a process, but you're doing work that is fast paced, high growth environments, right? But you're talking about also leading with empathy, which sounds like slow and taking time. How do you resist the pressure to trade in empathy for efficiency?
Well, I think because both core values are very authentic to me, it's actually
Mm,
quite easy to do. I think it's the harder part about it is helping others come to the same realization that it is possible. Empathy, while it's something that I have innately within me, honestly, sometimes it does make it tougher to have as a value and just as a characteristic, because sometimes you're overthinking and you're overanalyzing and you're super anxious, and it's not always a good thing. However, I do think that if you're hyper aware of it and if you can balance it with efficiency, you can kind of create like just like the perfect dynamic of a team or overall philosophy within an organization. So I can give you an example of, how what that means in my team. So empathy for me means I understand that we're a remote first environment. You're working from home. That means you are dealing with all the day-to-day chaos that comes from working from home, whether it's you're driving your kid to soccer practice in the middle of the workday, you're going to your doctor's appointments, but at the same time, understanding that the standard is all of this work still needs to get done. So I'm really, really flexible. And I do think that comes from empathy. Others lead with a lot more just of an iron fist.
mhm.
I don't need to do that. Of course, I am very controlling. So sometimes I have to remind myself that hey, they're actually doing a really great job. They don't have, they don't have the same work schedule as you, and that's totally fine.
Mhm.
Their home life looks different than mine, and again, totally fine. And I love the team that I have built because of those two things. And again, my team will tell you I'm tough but fair, I guess. And I mean, that's just one way. But I constantly, as an HR leader, I also coach leaders in the organization to be similar. A lot of them naturally are where I work. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I think something, and I really appreciate the way you broke that down. Where you started was being self-aware. Where are you? Who you are and who's showing up. And even to this fact to say, I can overthink. I can get in my head. Like you're starting with yourself, who's showing up to be able to speak in and to lead and to encourage where you are, and has and the health of where you are is going to directly speak into how you're able to lead and encourage and empower others, right? And frankly, you used a perfect example. When we talk about hybrid work, when we talk about fully remote, that space, I'd still laugh when people say, Wendy, you do so much from the remote space. Doesn't the laundry call you? If your laundry's talking to you, we got a problem. But I get it. Like there are other things that can distract us. And yes, it looks different whether there's kids in the home and depending on the time of year, are we out of school and things of that nature. So being able to recognize, hey, I'm different from them, but we've all signed up for the same organizational why. And so how can we do that best together? And as a leader, how do you call them up into that space? That's what I heard from you, which is such a tremendous, like you said, balance of those two things, and the dynamic of efficiency and that empathy space. It's hard, right? You've had the opportunity to scale multiple HR functions from the ground up. When you're in that space of building from scratch, what is something that you say, this must never be left out of the foundation. If not, your culture is at risk. What would you say that is?
Yeah, that's a very I think interesting question. So I think different people have different schools of thoughts,
Yeah.
and I think the one that I have recently come to terms with is understanding also that what the characteristics, the values, like the work ethic that
Mm-hmm.
helped start the organization is not the same thing that's going to scale your company. And I actually really recently did this exercise where we took a look at the organization where we were 4 years ago. Maybe we were 40 employees, 50 employees, but even let's say 5, 6 years ago when we started, right? Super scrappy. I was not here then, but I commend and applaud the founders of the organization that, really were super scrappy and they were able to wear multiple hats. How
Mm-hmm.
and the reality is not everyone can do that. Working in a startup is not for the faint of heart.
No,
So
ma'am.
being able to hire those type of individuals early on is crucial for the scaling of the business. However, kind of contrary to that is now we're 250 employees and recognizing that what started the business isn't what's going to now take us to 500 or 1,000 employees, right? Now you need experts, someone who is not going to wear five hats, maybe not even two
Mm,
hats, right? I mean, this is someone who is going to be super specialized in one thing, and they're going to be they're going to really hold a lot of that organizational knowledge
mm-hmm.
around a specific product or task or department, whatever it may be. Right, your systems are going to change. The way you have your organizational layout is going to change. You're going from a flat organization to a lot more of a dynamic and more of a matrix where reporting lines are going to change. So that's the long answer. The short answer is I use the terms agility and ambiguity often. I think that's constantly what characteristics of a really successful individual in a startup. And
Mm,
this is someone who needs to be super comfortable with ambiguity. And, what does that mean? They need to be able to not have all of the information, be okay with it, and still be able to make something out of nothing, maybe not
mm-hmm.
understand the why behind something. Oftentimes that's difficult for certain people to do because people want to know the why.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of people tell me often, I don't know how you do what you do. Working in a startup seems so complicated and so difficult. And I say, yes, but I love it. It's super challenging. It motivates me. It challenges me. It helps me with my personal and professional growth. I have tried to go back to a large organization just in the last 2 years, right before I came to this role. And I realized it was not for me. I enjoy the challenges that comes with growing an organization.
Again, you gain, oh gosh, so much richness in that space that you just gave to us and shared. And it goes back to you being self-aware. This is who I am, not being afraid to try something new and to be in that space and not even saying, hey, it's not that I'm not skilled, because I think we can get into, oh, it didn't work, it must be my skill set. No, if it was square peg round hole, it's not who you are. It's not where you flourish. The other piece that I do not want anyone to miss is that it is a dynamic space. We can never take our foot off the pedal when we're talking about leading an organization. It is dynamic. And when we talk about planning for strategy, where we start and where we want to go are going to have different needs along the way, and being able to plan for that, being able to, like you said, recognize from being flat to dynamic who needs to come and play. And if we don't have the finances, we can get into that space for that today. How do we get there? What do we need to be doing today to move to that space where we can bring in those experts so that we can realize those goals. I think you painted that picture so clearly. And again, then you can bring that clarity to those that you're leading so that they can have confidence to move forward, and you can do that together. We're not talking about a silo here, right? So I love the way that you painted that. And I think it's really important for us as leaders to recognize the role that we have in that space of bringing people along and making sure that we realize who we are. And if, are we the right ones to be leading said, initiative? Is it time to hand that to someone over? It doesn't mean you're not leading, right? You, of course, and I'm so thrilled about this, the people first values that you lead with, right? We're also talking about the urgency of work that you're doing within an organization. That can be a real tension, right? We were just talking about how to do that. You bridge that divide, I feel, just in our conversation really well. I've got to ask, do you experience the burnout in keeping that tension moving forward? And if so, how do you address it personally?
Yes. So burnout, I think, is, it has definitely been topic of conversation for the last 4 or 5 years, and, even before that. But I think we recently started talking about it way more.
Mm-hmm. And
The,
defining it very differently.
yes, and I have to, be honest. In the past, I have felt burnt out from doing a lot less, but that's
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't feel like my personal values aligned with the organizational values, or even with my leaders' values. Now I am just so blessed and grateful that I work for a company where the company itself is mission driven, and all of us that work here, we are super engaged and aligned with the mission because of what we do, and every second matters. And that in itself just automatically, I feel like, increases my ability to perform at higher levels without getting
Mm-hmm.
burnt out. Can I confidently say that I haven't experienced burnout? Not necessarily, but I don't think it's not from the workload itself. I think I have the capacity, and I am just resilience to take on a lot of physical work. I think sometimes the burnout comes from the unknown of, okay, I have created all of these things. I've put all these HR programs in place. What do I want to do next? I'm not good at sitting idly by. And so when I do, that is when I start to kind of spiral, overthink, overanalyze. Honestly, that's what burns me out. It's like the mental of aerobics,
Yeah.
gymnastics, if you will, of just
Yes.
trying to figure out what to do next, right? So the things that quote keep me up at night, and it's trying to solve for problems that aren't even there, if you will. When I first joined the organization, my leader and I, we had a crawl, walk, run approach. And that was because I came on board. There was nothing established, no HR team,
Mm-hmm.
nothing. So I was a team of one. Then I quickly became a team of two, then three, then four, five. And yes, so now we're five. And, it was really easy in the beginning to set up things to get us crawling, then walking. But as you're setting up the organization to run, right, this is where you're solving for the deeper philosophical issues within an organization, right? That's the culture piece. How do you, create the best culture? And that's where we are now. And I'm really happy that within 2 years we were able to get here. I'm really, I'm grateful that I have a leadership team that's really supportive. So again, all of these things definitely help me feel super supported. If I didn't feel the support, I think it would 100% lead me to feel the burnout. And I think I have had lulls of burnout. I think we all do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I deal with it really well. And it's usually during those times, it's okay, Evelyn, let's not take on any additional projects, or rather make additional projects for myself and my team. It's okay, let's finalize some of the things that we've been working on. Let's just, remain status quo, maybe a week, maybe 3, maybe a month, and then,
Yeah.
kind of pick it back up. And again, I'm really fortunate that I have the ability to do that. But I have that ability because everything that I've done is, very self-imposed, if you will, right? So the projects are ones that I create myself. So, yeah, but yeah, so I hope that kind of answered
No,
the question.
you did. And I'm just, wanting to, you're one of the most self-aware people that I have
Yes.
ever engaged with, even in a short period of time, because I watch you, even in our conversation here, kind of walk through that space of, okay, Evelin, let's take a step back, right? And recognizing that's where it starts. It starts here with you before you speak that out to anyone else. I also love the fact that I said this, burnout has been redefined. We define it in a number of ways. I love that you brought up it's not just about the workload, because I think as leaders we can, if someone is brave enough and you've created a safe space for them to say, hey, I'm feeling burnout, or I'm walking towards that space, this doesn't feel good. If they feel comfortable enough and safe enough to say that, we immediately at leaders can jump into, oh, is it just too much work? I mean, we got to get it done. And you pointed out, which is something that I've experienced, and even with those that I've had the opportunity to coach, it's a misalignment. More times than not, that is where the burnout really starts, is like you said, whether it's misalignment with the leader, whether it's misalignment with the mission of the organization, or what the organization said their mission was, but the movement that you're doing it doesn't match. It doesn't make sense. And that just takes so much more energy. It's not, wow, there's just so many tasks and the day is too full. If you're aligned, then that's energizing at points in time. Again, you said it, not hearing, maybe we do need to take a pause. Maybe there is time to let's finish and complete before we add another. But I love the way you define that. And I think that's something that we really want to take a deeper look at, especially when someone you're leading comes to you, or hopefully you are being others aware to see, something's changed in the way that they're communicating, responding, and realize that that very well may be not just, but a misalignment, not too many tasks. So no, you did a phenomenal job like fleshing that out for us. I really appreciate that. In our conversation, you've done a great job, like I said, really self-aware, but of describing yourself as someone who leads in both this courage and care space, which is a beautiful synergy together. But I want to see if you can give us a story. Tell us a moment when that balance was really tested. High stakes involved. How did you respond when in that time? If there's one that comes to mind.
So, okay, I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. Is it if the way that I lead has ever been tested, I'm guessing in a negative way, by any of my direct reports or by anyone in the organization?
And they can go either way. So, right, you're doing that courage and care space with someone. It may be well received with who you're actually walking that out with, but you could have leadership who's saying, "Hey, we're not moving fast enough on this. Kind of let's get this go." And so you having that care, courage space, so like, "Hey, I'm gonna be empathetic and we're gonna be efficient." On one side of the coin or the other, someone may not think you're moving fast enough. Someone thinks you're moving too fast. So how, when it wasn't positive and rainbows on both sides, how did you respond?
So, I don't want to sound overly arrogant or cocky right now, but I have to be honest with you. I don't think I have been told that I'm not working fast enough in the last 5 years that I can recall. And so, I'm sure earlier in my career I have been, but at that point I definitely had no leadership skills. I was not the self-aware individual that you see before you today. So, if anything, I feel like I need to scale it back with my team. And, I've had mentors and my boss tell me, hey, it's okay if if you guys have a lot on your plate right now. You don't have to add something additional to your plate. So yeah, it's usually been only one way. It's being encouraged to slow down and not burn out me or my team.
Well,
And
and I love that you're speaking that out. And again, I don't think that that's arrogant. That's a place that you've grown into. What I really was trying to flesh out there is not that you work too slow, but if you're in a space with someone that you are mentoring, that you
mm,
are leading, and they have a need for more of the caring side of Evelyn.
mm,
And so in doing that, that may put, like you said, a week, 2 weeks, we may have to make some adjustments in the work that's being done because you've got to address this person in front of you. That was really my place in space there. And you might find a really good balance in that they're feeling the care and you're continuing to be able to move. But sometimes that's where our tension comes in. And so that's what I was really trying to see if you had any space in there.
yes, no, I definitely have space in there. And you know, now 2 years in of building out my team, I see it as a gift that I have different types of people that report to me. I have a high performing individual that I can throw anything her way and she can confidently handle it with just so much joy. And I have on the other side of the spectrum someone who's a little bit younger, more green in her career, and she does require more mentorship and a little bit more guiding. And I have had difficult conversations with her, I would say, in the past. And if she was to listen, she would know who this is. And, we have a great relationship, because I too am actively trying to remain self-aware of the fact that she's not me. She does not, work at the same pace as me, right? Her personality is different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
And she's had a lot of different like personal priorities in her life, and I have had to understand that as well. As long
Mm-hmm.
as I think the communication needs to be super
Yes.
fluid. And it's her letting me know I can't, I need to be offline until 12 p.m. I'm doing XYZ. I'll catch up on my duties, after 5. And really building that communication. But I do think that it's certainly taken time for me, honestly, for me to adjust. And I think it's been a great learning opportunity for me to remember that everyone needs a different leadership type from me.
Yes.
And honestly, I think that's okay. I'm happy that I see it now in my career versus later down the road, because I have had leaders lead with, the complete opposite of how I lead today.
Yeah.
And, where they take a one size fits all approach, which we know doesn't work. And, but just to be super frank, it's still a learning curve for me where I have to remind myself they are not you and you are not them. And how can you each support and understand each other? And honestly, it's just having super candid communication.
You've said a number of times, and I think that was so beautiful how you phrased that if your team was to describe, one of the things they would say is she's driven, right? It's this way. We're going to get it done, moving fast. I think that would be a descriptor, but I think first and foremost, your team would say you see them and you hear them, like that they feel actually empowered to do what they do and at that pace because of how much you put them first. I think that's really what leads out, because in each and every opportunity that you have to even walk through that conversation with an emerging leader, and we all have that responsibility as leaders for those who are coming up behind us of how we pour into, I'm quite sure that that person recognizes that they can trust that when you have those hard conversations, it's coming from a place of calling up and helping them to be able to really step into their leadership. And so I would say that that's what you're leading with, and that's how they would describe you. We could continue this conversation for hours because it's so rich and our time is coming to a close. But I have to ask this because I think that it's important for audience to hear. And I think you're just going to leave us with something great here. The culture around us feels like it's unraveling, right? Work culture, and sometimes we don't feel like we have permission or power to fix anything. We're just trying to keep our heads above water. If a leader's out there listening, and I think there are many of us, what would you say to them in that space with all of this kind of unsettledness to keep things moving and to not lose themselves in it? What's your advice there?
Yeah, that's tough. I do think the last 4 or 5 years they've been peaks and valleys
Yeah.
and a constant flow of unprecedented events. And I do believe it's a very difficult time to be both a leader and work in HR
Mm-hmm.
because we have to be hyper aware of mental health and just the wellness of all of our employees. As we know, we need to keep employees happy, healthy, and engaged for them to pour back into customers. And I do think that all leaders need to be hyper aware of the fact that they need to listen to their
Mm-hmm.
people. And I keep coming back to this, but I do feel grateful to work at an organization where, our CEO actively asks for feedback and, what can we be doing different or better? And I do think that it's, I'm not sure that he was always a leader that actively sought feedback, but he certainly is one since I've been working with him, with the rest of our leaders as well. And they are very just diligent in trying to apply those learnings from the surveys and general feedback sessions in the best way that we can. Of course, there's, different people come from different schools of thought. So how do you bridge that gap? I think and again, needing to have those candid conversations is important, but really just being open to listen and not remaining closed is the number one thing that all leaders need to do, because in these crazy, times where things are constantly changing and evolving, sometimes all employees want is someone to listen to them, even if they know that we can't make any changes. But again, it's leading with empathy, right? And it kind
Yes.
of all comes back to the same thing. And when a leader leads with empathy, I think it truly shows. And
You're absolutely right. I mean, you're talking about having courageous conversations with people. If that empathy isn't there, then there's no trust. We don't get to the courageous
mhm.
conversation. We get head nodders. We get people who quietly quit, right? So you're absolutely correct. I think so well said. And what a great way for us to wrap our time up together, because you've put back in front of us the importance of seeing and hearing each other so that when we talk about feedback, as I have a wonderful mentor that speaks in, feedback is a gift. We
Mhm.
need to be able to view it that way. Wow, this has been so rich and so full today. Nothing that we've talked about stays here. We take it with us. I always like, before we close things out, to get a little bit more of an insight behind the scenes of any and all of my guests. So, some important quick fire questions for you. Favorite ice cream flavor? What are we scooping up for you?
Honestly, I love a vanilla chocolate swirl.
Okay. All right. I mean, it sounds very balanced. I like
Yes,
that.
and very simple, brings me back to my childhood.
You know what? I was just talking about the ice cream truck coming down the road with a friend. Like I'd be happy with that. I'd be a child all over again. Okay. And you and I had a little bit of this conversation green room, but go to activity when you're off the clock and Evelin needs to recharge. What does that look like?
Super long walks, 5, 6 miles, ideally around nature, chirping birds. Sounds silly, but I've become a little bit of a bird nerd and I just enjoy watching them.
I love it. Not silly at all. And for, you know what? Not silly, but super ironic, because for someone who is so high energy and so fast paced, that is something that has to take time
Yeah.
and you have to be still, right? So I love that, and speaks to how you are able to recharge yourself and come back to be that fiery leader. Evelin, you have inspired boldness and excellence today through our conversation. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story and providing just a glimpse into your relational leadership journey. Your passion and insights truly have energized the conversation, and I'm sure our guests would agree. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Wendy, thank you so much for having me on. It's been really, really nice chatting with you.
Wonderful. Yes, likewise. And look forward to more. Cultivate collaborators, you know what this time is. It's a wrap, but it's never over, because each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up. Let's make an impact and keep being better together. Thanks, everyone. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com.